Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I have Dr. Rana Al Falaki, founder of Light Changes Coaching. Dr. Rana helps professional women and business owners experience freedom and flow like they never have before by shifting from wanting to being and using a powerful core energy coaching process. The result is greater success and fulfillment in every area of their lives. And she's a multi-award-winning leader in her field. She's an international speaker and trainer, pioneering researcher, a core energy coach, and leadership master practitioner. She's also the best-selling author of several books, including a #1 international bestseller called Women Who Want More: How to Create a Balanced and Fulfilled Life. So who wouldn't want to hear more about that? Welcome to the program, Dr. Rana.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's a real pleasure and honor to join you today from across the world.
Across the world, there you are, over in London, and I'm in Sydney, Australia. But we are, that's right, it's a small world with us women globally, just doing our thing. So tell the listeners a little bit about what are you doing with core energy? What does all this mean? Well, how do you specialize in a core energy technique?
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because when we start talking about energy, people think, oh, here we go, and and you're a bit woo-woo and you're a bit eccentric and all the rest of it. And actually, personally, I am, but I'm obviously not in my business life and my coaching life, because you have to accept each person as they are. And but if we think about what energy actually is, when we walk into a room, all of us would say, oh, this place has a really nice feel about it, or it has a really nice vibe about it. Or we can want to or not want to engage in a conversation with somebody, or go into a room with certain people, or we spend time with people and we leave them and we feel drained. Why does that actually happen? It's because of our energy. These people are either when we talk about someone being in your personal space, they're in your energy field. So actually everything is energy. Our feelings are energy. Those butterflies in your stomach, that might be anxiety or might be fear. What you're doing is you're sensing an energy that happens to be within you or around you. So the core energy coaching process, what we do is we essentially put words to what those feelings are, to what that energy is. And we break energy up into what we call destructive and constructive energy, and learn how to shift that. So a destructive energy would be something that is, for example, holding us back, that's causing us stress. That's one of my specialties, is stress management. Things, the anxiety levels, the stress that we feel, the fear that we feel. And if we're all honest, those things either paralyze us, stop us from moving forward, or they cause us burnout, because we end up doing all the time, and really using a lot of force to achieve things. So we end up exhausted. And, and the normal natural level would be, your typical fight-flight mechanism. And It's designed there to protect us. It's just a lot of the time we end up using it in our everyday lives, so we get drained. And that's very destructive energy. If we linger in that type of energy for too long, we either don't achieve anything, in which case we don't feel that joy and fulfillment, or we burn ourselves out. So we end up with poor health, we end up fatigued, and we end up really not feeling fulfilled or enjoying success. When we're able to shift that energy that is therefore essentially inside of us, and we have all these different levels inside us, just different percentages and different amounts, and they show up in different circumstances. So when we can really shift that to a much more constructive energy, which might be one of rationalizing, of making us tell ourselves that actually it's all okay and make us feel better, and then shift higher than that, beyond just tolerating, to one of leadership, to one of seeing opportunity, one of purpose, one of passion, one of joy, and of course, ultimately up to flow state, which is one of the highest states when we're actually conscious, as opposed to when we're meditating, where then everything becomes an illusion. But when we become really co-creators of our lives and accept that we are in control of our lives, and that's one of the things people really don't feel a lot of the time, that they don't have any control. But yes, that we have complete control. We can be completely in flow. Anything can happen at the click of our fingers. We have focus, we have productivity, we have joy, we have passion. And, to live your life from that level, or primarily from that level, because that's not to say, things won't happen during even a day where we might react, or we might feel a bit stressed. But if we can really elevate up to those levels, that's really where we enjoy joy, fulfillment, in not just in our careers, but we've done studies that show, and we're showing statistical significance, that when you really increase somebody's, what we call our average resonating levels, so we can measure these energy levels through a particular assessment. When we increase their level, and the core energy coaching process has shown that you statistically do increase that over a 3-month period, the people who are coached in that way enjoy greater success and fulfillment in up to 14 different areas of our lives. So yes, our careers, our financial success, our relationships, our leadership skills, our health and wellness, and so on. So it's really not about shifting your situation, it's about shifting what's in you. And by doing that, you shift your situation very, very clearly. Sorry, a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's just so interesting.
Yeah, it is so interesting. Absolutely. And I love that. I aim to be in the flow as much as I can, because it's when you get into that state, it's often just feels effortless, right? Things. That's the thing that you notice. You notice that you just go, it doesn't drain my energy. In fact, it re-energizes while you're giving out at this crazy sort of balanced state. And it also it doesn't take anything away. It makes you more have time and opportunity to enjoy the presence that you're in, right? So while we know that, do you find many people don't actually know what being in the flow is? Do they know what they're trying to strive for, is what I'm asking you? Because if you haven't experienced that, and you go and say, hey, I'll help you transcend so you can sort of be in the flow as often as possible, what does that even mean?
Exactly, which is why you have to break it down and explain what flow is. And actually, if you do, people are like, oh yeah, I know that. Actually, I have experienced that, albeit not in their everyday lives, probably in fleeting moments. And it's exactly what you said. It's when time just flies by. It's the typical phrase, oh my God, time flies when you're having fun.
Yes.
That is usually flow state, when you don't notice the time, and when suddenly everything just happens at the click of your fingers or at your fingertips. Everything just seems to work out, and you might be focused on a task and everything just works out. It works out as it's meant to. You're super productive. You're incredibly focused. You're not distracted. You're not interested in looking at your phone or when somebody comes to speak to you, it doesn't bother you. You don't react to anything. And you feel whatever might happen around you. You might be working from home, as we are in the UK. Walk into your kitchen, it's complete chaos, but you're trying to concentrate on something else, and it doesn't bother you. You can suddenly cope with things. Things may be piled on your plate, and you're able to cope with it. It's the externals, be it people, circumstances, do not affect how you react and how you feel. That's flow state. And it's when you just don't have this little voice on your shoulder trying to talk you out of things all the time. Because
the exhausting part, right? It's when it's like, you're not going to achieve that, you're not going to get there, what were you thinking? All of that kind of negative self-talk just is so draining and time consuming while you entertain it, right? And the other side is just so lovely not to be so reactive. I think if you're at a state ready to, snap, like, why are you bothering me? What is it now? Those sorts of feelings, then that's right. You can get into a space of, I'm really enjoying this. But if someone does interrupt, you can kind of, what can I do? How can I help? It's not the intense irritation that you can get easily. And it's understandable, isn't it? Because when you're not in the flow, so much of life does get irritating.
Yeah, which is one of the destructive energy levels of destruction, of frustration, irritation, anger, the need to control, blame, and that's that, and it's a very reactive type of energy. And so as we become more conscious beings, and this is really what it's about becoming conscious. It's about being aware of yourself and what you do, and recognizing that you have choice. And when we recognize that we have choice in everything that we do, we have power ultimately. So it's about changing reaction. For a normal reaction would be standing in front of a bus, it's coming at us, I better jump out of the way. And that's a what I call an energy level 2 reaction. The trouble is we react like that a lot of the time.
I think the topic of choosing how to respond in every situation is a fascinating way. Many people go, but I didn't have a choice. I had no choice. I had to respond this way. All these absolute statements, right? But you're here saying, as an expert in the field, we always have choices, right?
We do. And a lot of the time we really don't feel that we do. So, which is where we get to reacting. So like I said, standing in front of a bus, it's coming towards us. Our typical reaction would be, right, I'm going to run out of the way. And in actual fact, that's what we so often do in our everyday lives. We either freeze or we jump out of the way, which is that kind of destructive energy. Now, obviously, another way to look at it, and it's a bit extreme, would be to jump right up to kind of level 7 and say there isn't really a bus in front of me.
You want to be highly confident about that.
But it's an example of recognizing that obviously we interpret an event of I have no choice based on our belief system, based on our previous experiences, based on the belief systems of our peers, based on what we call our energetic influences that maybe there at that particular time. We may be in a social environment where we believe nothing is possible. Take COVID, for example, and lockdown, and people who have frozen.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about from the cold, but who literally thought, well, it's just not possible, versus taking a much more entrepreneurial or leadership approach of managing to convert stuff to online. I mean, it's just a small example, and I'm not saying it is for everybody, because there are things which are limiting, but it's just about how you choose to view the world, of just like, actually, wait, let me just take a second and let me actually see if there is a way around this. In order to make it work. So instead of viewing this thing that's coming towards you of freezing or thinking I just have to get out of the way, it's okay, actually, what else could I do with this situation? How can I turn it into an opportunity? And I think we would all agree that when we look back 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, after what we would call a negative life event, something that perhaps happened to you, you may well 5 years later turn it around and think, actually, it was awful at the time, but I now see the good that came from it. And so it's about not needing to wait the 5 years, but actually, even no one's to say, you're allowed to grieve and you're allowed to feel sorry for yourself and you are allowed to react, but then just take a second or a few days if you need it, and recognize, actually, how can I twist this round to make myself feel better? And you can't always shift from to, hey, I'm in the flow, it's fine. Nobody's saying that. That would be maybe a few too many rungs of a ladder sometimes to jump up. But it's actually, okay, where, how can I rationalize this? How can I make it better? How can I turn this into a positive? How can I serve? How can I make myself feel better, perhaps by serving or by feeling gratitude for somebody? Or how can I fix the situation? How can I actually turn this into an opportunity? What might the opportunity in this be? And it might just be an opportunity for learning. And then obviously jumping up into other states of flow as you get higher.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating because that's it. Opportunity and challenge are both correct depending on different perspective you're in. Isn't that true? So someone will say, oh, this was an amazing opportunity. And someone else would be, oh, no, I'm having a lot of challenges at the moment, depending on sort of which way they're looking at their situation.
Absolutely. But they're looking at the situation from the same energy level, because you use the word challenges. And that's the other thing. If you choose not to see something as a problem, but see it as a challenge, then you're already open to possibility.
Yes. Exactly. So that's right. So if it's a problem of like, well, I don't have a choice because I've got a problem, and if I can't solve it, I'm just going to have to write it out or wait till someone comes to help me, as opposed to this is a situation I'm not comfortable, well, you know, which is a challenge that I then have to step into, and then it could be a real opportunity, you know. And not everything is a great opportunity. Not every life experience you're going to sit there and go, wow, you know, I'm so glad that happened to me. We were talking before about energy, and when I think of energy, I often think of, you know, people who are high energy, are real rah, you know, they've got lots of almost noise and power. But then I also think about people, like we were talking before, about being in the flow, and it's often calm and a little bit quiet. So what's happening with energy there?
Yeah, and that's actually, it's a different, there are kind of two axes to it. So you can have the woo, 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 you know, and it kind of your cheerleader energy, which is, so yeah, you're feeling really happy and all the rest of it, but you're physically exuding a lot, versus you can still be a very, very high energy, but very calm. So they are just associated with different, just on different scales, and just associated with different moods. So we would put different labels on them, you know, like excited versus flow are not the same thing, but they, you know, they resonate at the same level, but they just manifest in different ways. And likewise, you would have the same when you're feeling, you know, when you might be feeling low, you know, you might be feeling really blue, in which case you're very quiet, and you're a very low energy type of mood. Or you may also be low energy but not so quiet. You know, you might actually be really moaning about something, you know, and really kind of letting off steam, or, you know, and being really vocal. So it's kind of, it's a different type of, that's almost, instead of a single line graph of a bar graph, that's where we would put things on a grid. With a kind of an X and a Y axis, and then you could pluck out a different feeling at every stage. And that's fascinating, actually, because I do a lot of work with on emotional intelligence. I'm a coach for a fantastic app, which I will actually give them a plug, because if you ever want training in emotional intelligence, it's an amazing course to take. It's called OJI Life Lab. And we use the model from Yale University, which is actually exactly what you just said. And we, you know, is that, which has that X and Y zone of, you know, of high energy but low vibe, and vice versa. So you could have, so it's a different type. So it's a different type of energy. So your high energy and low vibe would be, for example, in the red zone, when we're really angry, you know, because we're using up a lot of energy, but we're really furious. So it's a low vibe. It's not what you would call a good energy. I don't like to label anything as good or bad, because being a very highly catabolic person, I don't make judgments, because you know, when you make judgments, actually it's a catabolic state to be very judgmental. But we'll just use it at this point. We'll call something good or bad. So yeah, you're really, really angry about something. So you're using up, expending a lot of energy, but it's quite destructive. So that would, for example, be the red zone, and versus the green zone, which is what you were saying. Yeah, yay, woohoo! You know, that really excited.
The Oprah zone.
versus flow zone, which is yellow, which is actually just much calmer, being in flow, being really, really productive. Versus the blue zone, which is when you're feeling quite blue, you're kind of your low energy and your low vibe.
Fascinating. You also mentioned a lot in your narrative focusing on feeling rather than the problem. And I think I've heard a lot of coaches and therapists talking about, getting to the source of the problem or the source of the limiting belief, which obviously you are in your work, but you're actually talking more about having an awareness of the feelings and the emotions, and then linking you to be able to help the person be able to address what challenges they're having. Tell me a little bit more about that.
It's almost just dragging stuff out with you. And, I remember 15, 18 years ago or something, I just, my story was constantly always repeating the same patterns in my life, disastrous, abusive relationships, and would always feel that I never had any control, would find myself like that in work situations as well. Just the same pattern again and again and again, incredible career success, but personally, things wouldn't happen, and just was always on a treadmill, always struggling, always pushing. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to have to sort this out once and for all. And I didn't even know about coaching at that point. So, I went and found a therapist, and boy, did they want to talk about feelings. I couldn't talk about feelings. I mean, the minute someone said to me, how does that make you feel? I would just completely clam up, like, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't say a word.
Yeah.
So one thing is, so coaching is not necessarily going to a therapy session, but it's always this understanding that we have this kind of holographic relationship between thought, between feeling, and between intuition. And it's about putting all three of those together, recognizing that your thought leads to a feeling and vice versa, because we can work backwards.
Yeah.
You say, you could have a vent off about something massively, and then it's like, okay, well, what's going on for you right now? Well, I'm really angry, whatever. It's like, okay, notice I said I'm really angry rather than I feel really angry. Okay, you're really angry. How do you want to be? Well, I want to be really jubilant about this. Okay, so if you're really jubilant, what do you need to be thinking to be feeling this way? So we can move it backwards, and recognizing that the thought that we have triggers the emotion, and that we can then change our thoughts. And the more, which of course may well be limiting beliefs, and the more that we change our thoughts, even from a sort of microscopic level, we ultimately, this is obviously how neurolinguistic programming works, but it's also the basis for neuroscience. So the more we change and do that brain training and really do that exercise, the more we change the way our neural pathways work, the way our brain works, the way our brain chemistry works. And the way our brain chemistry works, what we have in our brain is our pituitary gland, and which will then release these hormones into our body, which will tell different parts of our bodies to do different things, be it our thyroid gland or adrenal gland, and so on and so forth. And that ultimately creates our behaviors and our feelings. So if our pituitary gland isn't in overdrive, releasing, telling our adrenal glands to release a ton of cortisol, which then creates stress, etc., etc. So if we can reprogram that to do something else, then we're going to feel differently.
Yes, definitely.
Ultimately change our brain chemistry. We change our DNA. We change the way things actually work, so that we then don't react. So we don't have to take a deep dive into how we feel about everything, as opposed to a therapy session. And that's a big difference with coaching. But it's about what happens in our everyday lives, because they are our normal beliefs and our normal opinions.
Yeah.
If we take an example, we're talking about women and women empowerment, right? So if we take an example thinking, well, women will never be as successful as men. How does that alter your behavior if that's what you truly believe?
Yeah.
And right. And if that's what you choose to believe, you are limiting yourself, because you're limiting yourself to a certain level of success, because in your heart of hearts, therefore in how you feel, you never believe that you can achieve as much as a man, for example. So but that's so automated within you that you don't even notice it. So the job of a coach is to spend that time listening, notice that you've said that, pluck it out of you and say, look, I've noticed that this is coming out of you. What do you think about that? And what do you choose to do with that thought? And there comes the choice again, recognizing that, yes, it was automated within you. And it's understandable because it might be how you brought up, like we said, the energetic influences, your peers, the people around you. But actually, what do you choose to keep this belief now? Or would you choose to change it? And if you wanted to change it, what would you change it to? And what is the belief that would make you feel? So then we come with the feelings. This is a limiting belief. How is it making you feel? It's making you feel like you can't achieve. So it's making you feel trapped, for example. Okay, if you wanted a belief that's going to make you feel more powerful, make you feel more successful, then what would you want to believe? And it might be, okay, you know what? I choose to believe that women can achieve whatever they set out to do just as much as men. It's like, okay, well, if you really believe that, how do you feel? Well, I feel whatever. It's like, okay, then next step is, what do we need to do to prove that to you and to practice that new belief? Because obviously the belief may be so extreme, you're like, well, I can keep telling myself this, but I don't believe it. It's not resonating. So it might be that you have to decide to go out and look at some evidence and prove to yourself that there are an incredible amount of women who have been hugely successful. Okay, right, I've gathered the evidence. So what happens when we gather the evidence? We start to change our way of thinking because we're challenging that belief.
Because that evidence was always there, right? It's just now suddenly when we look from a different perspective, it's like anything. If I said look for red cars or boats or whatever it is, all of a sudden you see them everywhere, so that's it. It's kind of like, I think we don't realize what a distorted biased perspective we have just because of all that roadmap of thinking, that, and that's then repeated and repeated and repeated throughout, our life journey, because of a few facts that form those views. And so how long do you find it takes for people, that principle that it takes 3 weeks to, start changing a habit? Does that sort of thing work in your world, or does it actually take much longer and constant reaffirming to start believing new mindsets?
Yeah, people want, people always want a quick fix.
Overnight success.
And what we often find, what's interesting is it's never about the first thing that someone comes to you with. So you end up finding actually that's not the real issue, and you end up uncovering a hell of a lot more. But the core energy coaching process and the studies that we've done to show how your level of consciousness increases, typically would take 3 months to really start seeing and embracing those changes. The difference is it makes those phenomenal shifts, and they are much more sustainable than a traditional coaching process, because you really do shift the core.
Yeah.
You shift the core of the issue, you shift what's inside you, as opposed to, the traditional coaching. People think of a sports coach, of someone who's patting you on the back, highlighting some things to you, giving you some strategies, and then telling you, championing you and holding you accountable, as opposed to, I'm going to hold space for you, I'm going to hold you accountable, I'm going to champion you, but you're the one who actually needs to make the change within you. And you're also the one who needs to decide what that change is, because if somebody tells you what to do, you're never going to keep doing it.
No. In fact, you can try for a little while. It's like going on a fad diet or something, right? You can sort of keep it up for, not very long. But if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't feel like it's something you would do or something you would believe, if it doesn't have any of that authenticity, then it's doomed to fail, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And notice the word you just said there, which was resonate. So to resonate, of course, is a vibration of energy. But to resonate at the same level, resonate is a measurement of that's how we measure energy. So we use it in our everyday lives, we just don't notice it.
I don't think of it in that way, but definitely I do use it a lot. You're a fascinating lady, Dr. Rana. So tell me and the listeners a bit about your books. Then what books have you written, and how are they helpful to those who are reading them?
So I had wanted to write a book for years, and I was obviously at that time still working in my clinic as a specialist periodontist. And so I just kept asking myself, what's this book going to be about? What's this book going to be about? I don't know. And in the end, I thought, some of it has to be my life story, because there is a ton of stuff in there that I know could help so many people. Where again, on the surface, deemed to be this incredibly successful woman, and yet beneath the surface, someone who was probably really crying inside, to the point where I ended up with chronic illness, burnout of, when the hell are you going to listen? And then really finally sort of made that change in my 40s. I had dips where I would spurt myself on, and then you get back to life, and you forget. So that was that's my number one bestseller, Women Who Want More: How to Create a Balanced and Fulfilled Life. But I don't, I use aspects of my life story and an awful lot of clients and an awful lot of patients to illustrate. The story tells 1,000 words. It's so much. It's a very, very readable, very, very practical book. I am a very practical woman. So it's kind of like, this is fine. Tell me the theory and the science, but tell me what to do.
What can I do?
Give me some practical skills as well. So, and that's what all the reviews said as well. Really practical. So it takes you through actually 11 chapters that tackle every aspect of our lives. We talk about leadership. We talk about health. We talk about financial status and money. We talk about relationships. We talk about career, it's every single. We talk about parenting, so every typical aspect of our lives. Let's take a dive into it. What does it mean? How does it show up for you? Where might there be room for improvement? And then lots of examples, of course, and then lots of practical exercises for you to take a deep dive and explore if you want more money, or you want to change your parenting skills or your family dynamics, or you want to change your relationships, be that personal or professional, or you want more fun. Let's not forget the chapter on fun. The need to have fun and the need to be able to find and create time. But the key message ultimately, is that fulfillment has to come from within us, and therefore that's what we need to take a deep dive about. It's not about the externals, and my clients are what I call wantaholics, because that's what I was, a wantaholic. You're constantly wanting. You want because you feel that those are the things that are going to make you happy. And when I have this, I will be this. When I have this, or I'll just carry on till I have this. And we're addicted to it. And we're addicted to it just as people and as professionals a lot of the time. Yeah. And so learning you can still have all of that, but that doesn't have to be what makes you feel joyful. And when you stop that, you're actually a much calmer person. I am a much calmer person now than I used to be. You're much calmer, but you're also much more focused, and you're much more productive, and you're much more successful, and you're triggered much less in the same way, and you really can have a sense of that inner joy without things around you affecting you. And I give this example at the end of the book of, imagine ourselves standing in the middle of a flower, which obviously therefore has petals. And when we stand in the middle of that flower, we can change direction, we can turn around. No one's to say you have to stand still. You can put more emphasis on your career, on your fun, on your relationships, on your money. You can go in different directions, but what you don't want to do is step too far out. If you step out to the extreme and right the way to the end of just one flower, where all of your focus, attention, and energy on, eventually that flower is going to tip and the stalk's going to break.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so actually, you can stand in the middle, you can move out in different directions, but it's about creating that sense of balance. So that's Women Who Want More. Very practical, very readable, lots of exercises and lots of downloadable resources and things and audios and stuff that are on my website as well. And then other books I've contributed to are very much about consciousness, about being love. And noticing the being. So it's about a way of being, about being in our lives, and what is the fundamental core of us, and law of attraction based stuff. So again, about this ability to co-create, but not the typical for me, and again, it starts in Women Who Want More, and it's in several other books. I have a process that I call the four gets. So as opposed to the typical law of attraction, which is ask, believe, receive, a lot of people don't recognize that if you need to receive, you need to resonate at the same energy level in order to receive that. And of course, and you need to have engaged in those beliefs and get rid of the limiting beliefs. So it's a very systematic 4-step process to create, to be able to create and attract whatever it is you want in your life. And, it starts with the getting out, as we've talked about, the limiting beliefs, the need to get loving, which we haven't really touched on much, but the need for forgiveness in our lives, and the need for love, to give love to everything that might have pained us as well, because it's just harming us if we're holding on to the resentment, and a lot of forgiving, a lot of forgiveness of ourselves and of others, and the need, of course, to love and care for ourselves, which can start with self-care, and so many of us don't do enough of that, and we don't notice it until it's plucked to the surface. And then the getting rid process, which can be fun, it can be very difficult, but it may sadly mean getting rid of people, getting rid of situations that no longer serve us. It may just simply mean getting rid of the clutter in our heads, or physical clutter, but the need to create space for what it is we desire, and that might be space for the intuitive piece that we touched on earlier. When we are so busy, you are not open to intuition, to downloads, you're not receptive to ideas, to anything, because you just can't cope with anything else. So what do we need to get rid of to create the space? So they're all really quite deep energy releasing processes, and until you've released all of that, then you can get going with that final step. And that's where kind of the traditional coaching side comes in with, okay, let's set the goals, let's make those goals smart, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant to you, and put a time on them, and what might be holding you back, what might get in the way, and how can we hold you accountable. And that's kind of your traditional coaching. But if you really want to move forward on a permanent level, it's what do you need to get out, loving, and rid of before you can get going. So so a lot of stuff based around law of attraction, but it's about being able to create and giving yourself power and empowering you.
Beautiful. What would you have done differently in your 20s if you had known all of this information? How would it have changed your life?
I was so happy when I turned 30. It's so funny that you hit on the 20s, because the 20s were where it all happened. But you know what? For me, I wouldn't have done anything differently, because it's made me who I am.
Yeah.
It's made me able to help people based on those experiences. And I never see life with regrets. For me, everything is a learning opportunity. But then if so a lot of stuff happened that was beyond my control, such as my mother dying, and really feeling like, I really lost my anchor, and I lost my direction and my focus. But at the same time, I did my undergraduate and my postgraduate, and ended up, one of the younger specialists in the UK at the time. So, there were other things that were all great.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have gotten into, I think I would have recognized the pattern of abuse and powerlessness at a much younger stage, where I ended up in a lot of abusive relationships, or relationships that didn't serve me, personal ones. But like I said, it's made me who I am.
Yeah,
it's made me who I am. And then in my 30s, I have 3 amazing, stunning children, because I probably ended up in a relationship that didn't serve me. So actually it's all good, and I'm smiling. But I think, but if you'd asked me, 1 year ago, what might I have done had I learned that a year ago, i.e. where, those negative life events hadn't necessarily happened, then again, it would be the same thing. It would just be, I wouldn't have gone so far down a particular path. And actually that's chapter 2 of Women Who Want More, of, I learned the hard way. It took me 20 years. You don't have to. By by taking the time to recognize the patterns of what's going on in your life, and realizing that you do have power, and you can have power, and you can have choice. You don't have to be, you know, in a river with it just dragging you along. You know, you can row the boat, and you can go against the current if you want to. You really do have choice.
Absolutely. And it's a great time for, you know, young women particularly. And change is never too late to make some changes in your life anyway. But it is a great time that, you know, there's plenty of people who do say that because of the hard things that does make you who you are. And there's no doubt about that. But not everybody has to have a hard story. And we hope people don't have a hard story, right? Because, you know, it's such a joy for us to be able to impart onto younger women, to make them more aware of these patterns of behaviors or reasons for their thinking, a lot more self-awareness, so that they can be empowered to know what makes them happy, how they measure success, what choices they will make for their own journey, which can hopefully avoid a lot of unnecessary traumas and challenges, so that they can sort of free themselves up to just, have some more amazing opportunities, and to dream big and to believe big, you know. So, because as we know, you know, women can do anything.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that is exactly it. You know, that you don't have to go down those paths, you know, and you shed the stuff quickly, you know, you just, you know, you can just live in that beautiful state of joy, peace, flow, fulfillment right from the onset. And I mean, if you can start then in your 20s, imagine what you'll achieve by the time you get to my age.
Like a powerhouse. Woohoo! Fantastic. So how do people find you, Rana?
The best way, you can either reach out to me through LinkedIn, Rana Al Falaki, or message me there, or find me on my website, which is Light Changes Coaching, light spelled ILIGHT, lightchangescoaching.com. And you know, there's a ton of resources there, but also a contact form. So feel free to email me or message me through that. I'd be delighted to reach out to anybody. I love connecting with people.
I know that to be true. And so thank you for being on the program today. I'll put all of your contact details on my podcast platform, so the listeners can just follow that through. Definitely check out Rana's website. She's an amazingly gifted lady. Wow. And you can hear from the way she's presented today and shared her understandings that she has just so much knowledge and capacity to be able to empower you and help you on your journey. So I'm sure many people will be checking you out, Rana. And once again, thank you for sharing with me today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, Annie. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.